What's up, guys? Alex here. Thanks so much for checking out the video. This is part two of my series about why I am basically hitting the reset button on my personal brand, how I'm showing up digitally, how I want to show up online moving forward. Um, I'm super stoked for this video, and I'm super stoked for what I want to talk about today. If you need some background, or if you want some background, you can go back into my channel, watch part one, and to know me a little bit better, my background, maybe validate why you give a shit at all about why whatever I have to say might mean something to you. um, but at a high level, I've been doing creative work professionally for the past 15 years or so. Um, Lots of highs, lots of lows. I've had, another YouTube channel with a couple million views on it, and I'm deciding to abandon that. I'll talk a little bit about why in this video, but yeah, I've decided to really double down on trying to be my most secure self. I really want to defeat insecurity in myself, and I think in turn, hopefully, help other creative people defeat insecurity in themselves as well. So that's my little spiel. At the end of the last video, I kind of gave a teaser into what this one would be, which is this idea of desperate creativity. So the internet is an extremely desperate place. Social media is an extremely desperate place. And I think it's really important for us all to acknowledge, if you're a creative person, that we are in an extremely desperate environment basically all the time. And what do I mean by desperate? You could translate it as insecure. That's probably the word I would use, because I feel very insecure, and I found myself acting out of desperation because I'm insecure. And if you're a creative person, or you've ever created anything online, or you've avoided creating things online because you're insecure, I think you'll probably get where I'm going in this video a little bit. But at a high level, I think the internet's an extremely desperate place. And because it's an extremely desperate place, there's a lot of really weird incentives and people doing weird things online and essentially doing stuff that isn't true to themselves in order to garner attention, because the economy of social media and the internet is attention first. Attention drives money. And so what people generally are doing is they want to garner attention, and so they do crazier and crazier stuff. They eventually start losing themselves, maybe what feels true to them, for the sake of garnering more attention. And so I think there are a couple things at play for the reason why this is happening. And honestly, the more I've thought about this, the more it's really helped me steer my personal digital presence, and why I'm doing this whole kind of rethinking how I want to show up online, because I just started doing a little bit of inner reflection. And essentially, I've had this realization for a long time that insecurity, I think, is the foundational problem for most humans. And it's the thing that we all struggle with. And if you're a creative person, you definitely struggle with. And if you don't, I would love to meet you and teach me your ways. But I think I started noticing myself feeling more and more anxious, insecure, and this inner desire to create, but not out of a desire to create because I'm inspired. It was a desire to create to like catch up, to catch up with what other people are doing, to get more views, to get more likes, to get more followers, whatever. And I think that what I really observed is that certain platforms made me do this more than others, and certain formats and types of content made me do this more than others. And so I want to kind of paint this picture of short form versus long form content. And what I started noticing is that when I would spend time on Instagram, when I would spend time on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck it's called, um, or TikTok. I think TikTok has some exceptions. There's some more long form stuff happening that's interesting. But for the most part, it's short form, just attention, lowest common denominator, monkey mind stuff. Um, when I spent time on those platforms, were short form, whether it was written on X or video reels and shorts on Instagram, I found myself really disliking the time I spent in those spaces. And I really found that those spaces didn't make me feel great, both as a creator, but as a person. And it really kind of started bothering me. And to contrast that, when I spend time on YouTube with certain creators, I mean, honestly, YouTube is just so cool. And maybe it's just I got lucky with my algorithm. But it's basically any time I spend on YouTube, I hardly ever regret it. A lot of people probably waste plenty of time on YouTube. I don't feel like my time on YouTube is wasted because it's really entertaining. I learn a lot. The people are really interesting here, and I love it. And the same goes for Substack, which is, writers, long form writers generally. And those two platforms, Substack and YouTube, I started noticing when I would spend time there, I felt fine. I felt actually happy that I had spent time in these platforms and kind of soaked up whatever was going on there versus these other platforms. And it was kind of like insecure versus secure. And maybe it's just me, and this platforms could look different for you. Maybe Instagram is like your spot and you feel really good there. That's great. No judgment. But for me personally, I started realizing like, whoa, my insecure triggers really flare up on these short form platforms. And then my more secure, at peace, just curious, interested, creative mind really opened up on these other long form platforms. And so I think we all probably know this intuitively, but I think there's also, when you're a creator, you've probably thought through strategy. You've thought through like, well, if I make a long form podcast, then I should cut it up, chop it up into a bunch of little clips and put it on short form platforms and get all the returns back from those. But you're still getting kind of pulled into this idea of needing to be everywhere all at once. And your attention's getting chopped up into all these different places. And there's probably some truth to that. Like, there is a best practice to probably be on all these platforms in some capacity, making content that's native to that platform and succeeding in that way. But I've kind of come to this conclusion, and this is probably the main crux of this video, is that I believe all of the platforms online that we spend time on have reached a critical mass of users. And that means that I think you could double down on the places that make you feel good. For me, that's why I'm doubling down on YouTube and on Substack, because those are the spaces where I feel at peace, like I can be more myself, like I'm around my people, the people I'm interested in and want to hang out with. And you don't have to be there, but then also be in these very insecure, kind of weird places that make you not feel good about yourself and you don't feel good about spending time there. I just think there's a little bit of a switch from scarcity mindset to this abundance mindset of doubling down on the places you like spending time, because there's enough there. There's enough people on the platforms to where you don't have to spend your time in these places you don't want to be anymore. And because we don't have to spend time on the places we don't have to be anymore, the really beautiful realization that I got from that is we don't have to create out of desperation anymore. If you are making things out of your secure nature in spaces that feel true to you, that feel authentic to you, then you don't have to act out of desperation anymore. And I think that's a really exciting idea. This idea of doubling down, committing to different spaces that make you feel more like yourself, to make you feel more secure as a creative person and as a human, and really starting to shut the door on this idea of desperate creativity. And also just thinking long term, like, man, when I've had some success with short form stuff on Instagram, even on YouTube Shorts, where I've had multiple things get, millions of views on these different platforms. And the truth is, when I look back on those videos and, even right now, but especially in like 10 years, 20 years, I'm going to cringe because that wasn't me on those videos. It was me performing. It was me pretending to be something in order to get those views and that attention. And I think that was a byproduct of me being insecure and acting out of desperation on these platforms versus a video like this. Sure, I might watch this video in the future and be like, man, that was cringe, or man, that was dumb, or man, that was whatever. But I think I'll also intuitively know, like, I was being myself right now. I was being honest with who I am right now. And I love this idea of leaving a trail behind of your most real self on the internet. And, I just think that that's a way more exciting idea for me of how to exist online. And so this makes me land in the place of you don't have to spend time in desperate places anymore. You don't have to create out of desperation anymore. So what do I want now? And instead of desperation, what I'm looking for is depth. I want to find like-minded people. I want to find interesting people who are building stuff in the world and creative people who are also battling insecurity to make really interesting, cool stuff in the world. That's who I want to hang out with online. Growth-minded people who are creative and interesting. And that's who I'm making this for. And I think that's ultimately who I'm really excited to serve online. And so I think to wrap all of this up, I really want us all to stop acting out of desperation, to stop creating from a desperate place. And it's easier said than done. I have a great full-time job. Financially, I'm able to do this and not have to worry about money. But I think long term, when we're thinking in a more sustainable context, it's way better to work a regular job and then be able to create with authenticity on the side than to make all the money in the world not being yourself. Like, I see people do this all the time. People are not themselves. They turn into these weird they anamorph in these weird versions of their internet caricature person, and they kind of cease to be a human being for the sake of online attention. And it's a really sad, kind of devastating way to live. And I think we will really regret how we've done things looking back on that. And I would 1,000% trade how I make my living to have honest creative work versus just being a part of the fucking circus to make a living from it. It's just a really sad way to exist, especially as a creative person. It's super inauthentic. It doesn't feel real. And so I would really argue, like, we don't have to create out of desperation anymore. There's enough people in your place to eventually make a living there, to eventually find enough people who are into what you do to make enough money to survive, if that's what your goal is. If your goal is just to share things online, why would you share things in spaces that make you feel bad or make you act like someone you're not? So that's my real call, is that we've reached to the point in internet time where there's enough in the platforms we want to be in. I think I've said that enough times. So that's all for this video. The next video, I'll give a little tease here too, part 3 of this series of why I am revamping my personal brand, why I'm doing this work. It's this idea, I think it comes from Paul Graham originally, but this idea that action creates information. So the only reason why I know, or why I feel so strongly about these things, being insecure, being desperate, creating out of desperation, is because I've tried a lot of things. And the handful of times I've done things not out of desperation, it's like, oh, this is data now. And so this idea of action creates information, for you to find the right recipe of what works for you, you have to try stuff. And so that's what the next video is all about, is this idea of taking action, learning from that action, iterating from that action, and eventually landing in the place where you want to be. All right. Holy shit, I'm out of breath. I just talked so fast, drank so much coffee this morning, but I am hyped on this. No more desperate creativity. If you're into this, if this connected with you at all, if this resonated with you at all, please subscribe to the channel. Check out my Substack, link underneath. Yeah, I'm super excited for what is happening here. Super energized by this. And I hope we all can start creating from a much more secure place. And that's the goal. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you back here in a couple days for part 3 of the series.